right. Hi, I'm Heather Hooper. I am a senior aquarium biologist as well as the dive safety officer for the aquarium side of the operations here at Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. I came into this role, so my background is I've got a 4-year degree, a BS in marine and environmental sciences, and then from there I got a job straight out of school at the National Aquarium in Baltimore. I was an aquarist there, which is kind of like a zookeeper, except all of your animals live in the water instead of on the land. I was there for a number of years and then ended up down here at Mote. I've been at Mote for about 6.5 years now. So obviously initially my background started out very much in the husbandry, dealing with the animal side of operations. Just within about the past 5 years or so, I've started transitioning into the dive side of operations. Really, I was fortunate in my ability to start that transition just by showing interest in it here at Mote, and then from there I was really able to proceed and go into it. So I don't know what all.
So that's how you came into your role. How long have you been doing this again?
I've been with Mote about 6.5 years now. I became the aquarium DSO just within the past year. Before that, I was the aquarium dive representative, which can be somewhat paralleled to an assistant dive safety officer / a liaison between the husbandry operations and the dive safety officer.
What certifications and training do you have?
I have, well, aside from a 4-year degree, my dive-related certifications are I'm a NAUI instructor, as well as a CPR First Aid and O2 instructor now. That's probably what I've got.
What do you recommend for your position? For students in the class, what would you recommend them pursuing to become a dive safety officer?
So there's a number of different schools of background between aquarium and zoo dive safety officers. A lot of them start out in the recreational field and then kind of end up coming into the animal industry, so the zoo and aquarium industry. I kind of came at it from the opposite angle, where I started out in the animal side of the operations and then from there took an interest and came into the dive side of things. Regardless, some of the minimum qualifications you're going to need, though, are going to be your instructor certification, and then of course a lot of know-how. Some institutions have multiple dive safety officers or one DSO and a handful of assistant dive safety officers who specialize in volunteer management and onboarding. They might specialize in their gear and equipment. They might specialize in guest immersion programs. So there's a lot of different fields that you can go into, even just within the aquarium side of things.
Do you have other divers here on staff with you?
Yes, so the majority of our divers are staff divers. We have roughly 22 within the aquarium operations, and then we have a handful of our researchers or divers as well. The researchers follow AAUS standards, so they follow different standards than what the aquarium does. We do have a few volunteer divers within the aquarium. I'm actually in the process of developing a volunteer diver program at the moment, so hopefully in the next year I'll be onboarding a good number of volunteers as well as the staff.
Do you enjoy what you're doing?
Absolutely. If I did not enjoy it, I would not be doing it.
What are some of the things, what are like the top things, 3 things that bring you joy when you're doing this type of thing?
Honestly, just being in the water. So I get to spend a lot of time in the water, which is nice. What else do I enjoy? The animal interactions. We don't handle the animals on a regular basis, but you still get an up-close personal view of them. Animals definitely behave differently in an enclosed environment, so like an exhibit, versus they do out in the wild. So you really get to know those animals on an individual basis.
What exhibit specifically do you dive?
Our largest exhibit is our shark exhibit. It's 135,000 gallons. After that, we have our bonnet head exhibit, which is roughly 12,000 gallons. And then we do also have a manatee exhibit that we dive and a sea turtle exhibit. And then we have a couple off-site exhibits that we dive. They're roughly about 6,000 gallons.
How long are you typically underwater in those exhibits?
It really depends on what we're doing. Some of our off-site ones, we try and keep it down to about 45 minutes, but sometimes if we're doing a large maintenance dive in the shark tank, it can be over an hour, hour and a half in the water.
What are some of the things that you do when you use the phrase maintenance?
So maintenance for an aquarium or a zoo setting is going to include things like cleaning the acrylic. Obviously, it's very important for the visitors to be able to see the animals, as well as cleaning the decor. So that could be scrubbing either just good old elbow grease or using a large power hydraulic scrubber. We will occasionally buff the windows with a compressor. We might vacuum, so it's kind of a way of sifting through the gravel so that the gravel stays in the tank, but all the detritus gets sucked up and out. And those are the biggest duties that we take care of.
What kind of things do you have to stay current in for your role as a dive safety, and what do you expect of your fellow divers to stay current and to stay active in diving?
Sure. So all of us here at Moat, we require all of our divers to be a minimum of a rescue diver certification. After that, you have to maintain your first aid, CPR, O2, and AED certifications, as well as depending on your age, every 3 to 5 years, you have to go through a dive physical, and that has to be current as well. After that, in terms of volunteer things, you have a time commitment. In terms of staff, it's a part of staff's job operations, so they have to be willing to be in the water. Just because you're a diver doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the water for every single dive. We do rotate through the duties, so we have divers in the water, and we all have tenders, which are kind of the top side of the operations to keep an eye on the divers in the water as well as the animals and helping them out on the dry side.
And you track that administratively.
Yes.
What do you do? Why do you track it administratively?
So we log everything because that's required by law. So depending on the purpose of your dive, kind of helps you to determine if you're going to be following recreational standards or if you're going to follow scientific standards or commercial standards. So the way we interpret the standards to the best of our ability is that anytime we do a maintenance dive, because we are working, we are following OSHA standards, which is going to be commercial standards.
What are 3 things you wish you didn't have to deal with?
Or
Or that are kind of maybe drudge work that you go, oh, all right, I have to do this. It's part of the job.
Well, Florida can be very hot and humid in the summertime, so sometimes tending can be a little bit of a drag because it gets really hot standing up on top of the exhibit, especially if there's no breeze going through. Our exhibits that we dive are all open top, they're not within the building, so it can be pretty hot for that. Aside from that, I really enjoy all aspects of this position because it varies a lot. I have a lot of administrative and paperwork stuff that I have to do, but I do also get to be in the water on a regular basis, and I also get to help train and teach less experienced individuals and get to see the growth that they go through.
Would you say that your position or role as being the DSO for the aquarium has changed over the years? Or the time that you've been in the position?
It certainly has. Even the time, not necessarily that I've been the aquarium DSO, but just in the time that I've been with Moat in general. For us specifically, we first started out following scientific exemption standards, and we've been in the process of transitioning our dives to OSHA standards. The zoo and aquarium industry as a whole has been starting to go through this transition. We're in a little bit of a gray area because the method of diving that we utilize, the OSHA standards don't pertain to a lot of the duties that we perform, but neither do the recreational or the scientific standards. So,
do you see the industry heading in a direction, specifically just the dive safety officer role having a progression?
Sure. So within this industry, a lot of zoos and aquariums are getting more and more into research and conservation efforts. So a lot of the DSO roles are going from focusing just on in-house and exhibit diving to branching out into the community and helping with conservation projects.
Are there any organizations that you recommend the students check out or look into or start following? Any listservs, websites that you think would be beneficial for them?
Sure. So if you're interested specifically in the zoo and aquarium industry, AZA is an excellent organization. It stands for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Not all zoos and aquariums have this accreditation. It's kind of a gold star level for this industry. It means that not only are the animals taken care of, but also the public, the staff who work in that zoo and aquarium, if they're accredited, it's just a much higher standard. So that's definitely a website and an organization worth looking into. I'm also a part of the Association of Dive Program Administrators. You can get on the website, it's adpa.org. It's not necessarily going to be, you can't necessarily join the organization if you're not within this field, but it's still a good group to familiarize yourself with and check out the website. And also the AAUS, so American Academy of Underwater Sciences, is another really big one to get familiar with the way they operate.
Are there any publications or anything that you recommend reading or following?
I mean, really, for that, it's going to be staying up to date on whatever instructor agency you are certified through, and staying up to date on their certifications and OSHA standards as they change, if that's the route that you go. Really, it's just whatever route you go, stay up to date on their standards and policies.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. You went to DEMA recently. How was that?
I did. DEMA is a large trade show for it's not just recreational. As a aquarium zoo industry, we go as well because we deal directly with a lot of the manufacturers. They understand that we're not necessarily always going to be large purchasers like the recreational industry is, but it's definitely geared more towards recreational, like dive shops and cruise lines and, big trips and things like that. It's large. It's very large, but it's a really good opportunity to get to meet the vendors, make those contacts, and learn about new products that they have coming out as well. There's a new product showcase that they have every year. They also have the big Be a Diver pool there, so you can kind of try out some of the gear as well.
Okay, I'm going to stop here. So thank you. And we're going to pick up in another location.
Okay.